This is a new Kirblog about Breaking Bad. Finally, after 10,000 years, I'm free. No, that's later. We're not doing Power Rangers yet. Finally, I sat down and I watched through all 5 seasons of Breaking Bad. Now I think, God, it's been like half a year. So I intended to do this one a long time ago. I kept thinking that I was going to also have this be in tandem with Better Call Saul, which I just recently finished catching up with all 2 seasons of that. But I decided I wanted to kind of leave that to its own merits. So this is just going to be my review of the entire Breaking Bad series. Just to kind of preface, of course, obviously I will be going into massive amounts of spoilers. I'm going to be kind of doing a little bit of a different sort of review style this time. I'm just kind of hitting the record button. I don't know how long this is going to go for. I don't think this is going to be a shorter one necessarily, but I don't know how long it'll go for. I'm going to be kind of taking this, instead of like by season or by episode or by arc or whatever, I'm going to kind of go character by character and the specifics of each of them. I was thinking about when I was originally going to do this, like way back when I finished watching the show back in like the, I don't know, like last fall or something. I was I was going to do it kind of like by season and kind of determine these sort of arcs or whatever. But I was like, you know what? I feel that the arcs kind of lie within each of the major characters of the show. So I'm going to go with that instead. So yeah, spoilers be warned. The entire series, all 5 seasons are all, in succession, available on Netflix. So go check it out if you haven't. It took me a long time to finally bunker down and watch this show. I had previously only been ever shown by a friend the first 2 episodes. I think we watched in a row, and then we also watched the first 2 episodes of Better Call Saul. Which at first I was gonna be like, oh, maybe I'll watch Better Call Saul first. But as that series is ongoing, we don't know how long it's gonna go for, etc. And then and plus, like, people kept consistently telling me, no, it's better if you watch Breaking Bad first because there's a lot to Better Call Saul that I think will pay off. If you've seen Breaking Bad first. So I'm like, okay, fuck it, whatever. So I finally bunkered down. I watched the whole thing all the way through. So I'm gonna go through kind of all the major characters and kind of groups of them. I'm gonna start off with Walter's family first and foremost. So some stuff that I remember I was hearing from a lot of people was that with the exception of Hank, is that Walter's family were kind of almost like characters that were sort of bringing down, the kind of like cooler parts of the story. I mean, the general kind of purpose of all of them were sort of like at least in the beginning, was like, oh, okay, we've got to, give stakes for Walter to not be, found out on what's happening. Like, they are the biggest, outlet for all of his lies and deception and everything. And, but the fact that, like, he has a wife and son and, like, this extended family who's all, all these wonderful people and everything, etc. That said, of course, Marie with the kleptomaniac shit, which was kind of unfortunate that, I mean, Betsy Brandt's a great actress, but I feel kind of bad that Marie's character kind of ended up not really getting to, like, do a whole lot in the long run. She's just kind of like, and I'm here too. Walter Jr., I think his watching his growth with like the Flynn phase and like, whether he did or did not like his dad and, ultimately where he wound up, I think kind of made sense especially for his age and his relationship with, with his dad that is practically having Jesse, which I'll get to later, of course, be more of a son to him, or at least the way that he kind of has this attachment to him in a way. And with Walter, he almost kind of treats Walter Jr. more like an object of just like, he's my property, he's my family, with this whole thing of like, my family and I, they belong to me and I'm doing this all for them and all the money that I'm getting, etc. Hank is funny because I think in the beginning I wasn't sure how I felt about him. He seemed like kind of douchey and almost kind of like he's intentionally, you're not supposed to like him too much or whatever because like he's executed all jerky and Walter's the one you're supposed to like connect with. But especially in the beginning because for a while in the beginning I wasn't liking Walter, and then Hank was the one I was kind of rooting for, even though like he's kind of a dick. But I don't know, I'm kind of I'm kind of rooting for him because I want him to solve this mystery. I want him to to figure all this shit out and everything. And so and especially like the stuff with like him wanting to going to Mexico and that not working out too well, and then like and then as it's this slow descent into madness of like he keeps getting fucked up and he keeps getting into all these terrible situations entirely by Walter's fucking bullshit that he is constantly putting this poor guy in the goddamn hospital because he knows that he's the closest he's the biggest obstacle in his way, and at the same time he's trying to protect the biggest obstacle in his way. So yeah, Hank's arc and Hank's eventual kind of untimely demise by the end, like his whole arc and his whole everything that he accomplished and what he managed to do to kind of put the bad guys away eventually, even though it was way later than intended. He definitely went down as one of my favorite characters in the whole thing. Another favorite of mine, actually, that I don't know, maybe may or may not come to a surprise, because I'm not sure what like the kind of general fan response is to everything. I like when the show was airing, I knew that it was like one of the biggest things ever, and I knew everybody was like freaking out about it. But I really only knew who Walter and Jesse were. I didn't know who anybody else was, so I don't know what the general responses were to different characters throughout the course of the show. But over the course of once we got through the first like couple seasons, I think Skylar actually went on to be one of my favorite characters, because in terms of like relatability, I'm certainly not a mother who has to deal with that level of stress, but in terms of like, I think the one that I sympathized with and felt for the most, it was definitely Skylar. Which again is a shame, because I remember I was talking to Mike Lucas about this, and he was describing to me that he was kind of frustrated with a lot of people were kind of annoyed with Skylar because she and again, like the baby and Walter Jr. and the family in general were kind of like the thing that was like holding Walter back from being a total badass and getting to do all the stuff that he wanted to do, which of course was what it was all about for him and everything. But everything that Skylar was going to, and I remember the big moment, like early on enough, that made me just immediately love Skylar, was when she, again, without even knowing necessarily, the drug lord activity and everything with Walter, just the fact that like she calls him out on his bullshit and picks up everything and leaves. That entire scene, I believe that's the season 2 final scene, if I'm remembering correctly. That in particular is one of my favorite scenes, just because of the fact that like without even knowing what the fuck is going on, she knows that he's full of shit, like completely full of shit. And that was the big moment. I mean, and the entire rest of it, and and also kind of the stuff with Ted Beneke, who like is kind of not the most important character in the world, but Ted, I think, served a good purpose for the development between Skylar and Walter, and even I remember like when she when she was cheating on Walter. I mean, I don't think I've ever like been feeling satisfied about that, in any other situation I've ever seen of a character cheating on someone else. But it was like with Walter, with like just the way that he was treating everybody else, like at the moment, even though that wasn't necessarily the most mature thing to do. I think that that was like a pretty fair amount of punishment for him, all things considered, and then the fact that Ted was both like another obstacle and then ultimately ended up kind of contributing certain things later on. I think in the 4th season was kind of a cool way of utilizing him for the kind of grander scheme of everything. But yeah, but no, Skylar actually went on to be one of my favorite characters, in the fact that like she was the one who was, I mean, she, for like all the shit that she was trying to pull with just like making sure that everything went okay, so that nobody had to, get in trouble, nobody had to, go to jail. And, I mean, the fact that like within these confines and like you feel for how like trapped she is, and like, it's such a fucking like heartbreaking kind of, not Jesse's definitely the most heartbreaking. Again, I'm going to get to him later, but in terms of like I think a more like realistically and commonplace, regrettable, kind of thing. Like she was one that I really sympathized with a lot, and she went down to be one of my favorites, certainly. On the note of Jesse, that said, Jesse was, I think, as Mike described, he was a fucking tragic tale. Like, just a really sad case of like being led down the absolute wrong path, and continuing to be led down a deeper and deeper hole by all of the worst people he could have possibly had in his life. His one of my favorite moments with him in particular, that is just it's so subtle, and it's not even like a big deal moment, but it was something that I never forgot, is the part where he has this thing where he's like, I'm the bad guy, and I just have to come to accept that. And it's like, it's this consistent struggle of like, this guy is a fucking idiot. He's a complete fucking idiot, but he's not hopeless. Like, it's very clear that he wants to be, he wants to be just like a good guy, and he wants to like, this kind of catcher in the rye. I hesitate to use that because he's not quite like Holden Caulfield. I think he's, well, that's debatable, I guess. But at least the kind of like protectiveness over children, kind of thing, and like, the fact that like his kind of complicated relationship with his brother, and like all these other kids that he meets, and like the kid that like his second girlfriend has, and all that. I can tell that like there's so much to him that like you could have gone on a completely different path, and you would have been way better off for it. And people like Walter, just kept fucking your life up so fucking hard. Even though, Walter has this weird, complicated relationship with him of like, he thinks he's an idiot, and he yells at him constantly, and at the same time he kind of considers him to be almost like this son figure to him, the figure, as opposed to like because he doesn't consider Walter a father figure. I don't really think. I think he appreciates what he's done, but I think that Walter needed Jesse infinitely more than Jesse needed Walter. Jesse, I think he was one of the biggest highlights of. I think that next to a certain other one, he was Jesse was my second favorite character, and Aaron Paul, who I've also grown to love, very much, especially because I think I watched BoJack Horseman before. Yes, I did, because I remember Shady and I did the Kirblog about that a while back. I watched through that before I watched Breaking Bad, so like Aaron Paul, to me, I was hearing Todd before I grew to love Jesse, and like knew the character that he was associated with. I've still not seen Final Fantasy Kingsglaive yet, which you'd think by this point. And also so I guess kind of getting into the some of the side characters as well. Jane, which was, I mean, she was really cool. I really dug Jane. I think that Jane was very much that kind of like dream girl type, like, whoa, she's so cool and chill, and like, and like you're so fucked up, and yet somehow she's like into you type character. And and like her dynamic with Jesse, and like the two of them almost seeming like, oh man, they're gonna pick their lives back up, and they're gonna be okay, and everything's gonna be fine, and and then and she was this other kind of step on the path of Jesse's like fucked up awful life. And her father, played by special guest John Delancey, was really heartbreaking, and I remember I think that was the season, I can't remember if it was the 2 or 3 finale, but when he fucks up with the plane crash, which was goddamn, like that was a scary way to end that season. I can't possibly imagine following. I was spoiled. That was an example of that whole part with being spoiled on being able to watch the entire show in a row, because I would like binge episodes for hours, like almost daily for a while. As I sped through the show a lot quicker than I was expecting to, and yeah, I remember seeing that, and I was like, God, this would be torture if I was following the show in real time over the course of, I can't remember, I think it started in like 2008 and ended by 2013. I was like, Jesus, I would go nuts. I would go nuts having to wait. I'm already, I'm able to temper myself waiting for the next season of Better Call Saul. But with this, I was like, no way. There's no way I would have been able to do that. So I'm kind of glad that in retrospect, I was able to watch it all in a row. Anyway, other characters. Skinny Pete and Badger. I was mostly amused by them because I recognized them as voice actors. I mean, Matt Jones has gone on to do many different cartoons and things. He's on Pig Goat Banana Cricket and stuff like that, and his voice is super recognizable. When I was doing the videos for Looper, and I was doing one about where did the other Breaking Bad actors go off to, and I remember I was talking about him, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember he's done a lot of other cartoon stuff, and I recognize him. And then Charles Baker, I think, Skinny Pete. I remember I read his name and I was like, why do I recognize that name? What the fuck? Like, where's that name? And I was recently talking to Chris Bevins, who's a great Funimation director, engineer, actor combo. We were talking about Breaking Bad and like somehow, and he came up and I was like, oh, that's right. Yeah, Skinny Pete was Charles Baker. And he'd done some voiceover for Funimation. He was in like One Piece and a bunch of other stuff. And I was like, that's crazy. I can't believe that was the case. He was Koromarimo in One Piece and the drum arc, if anybody remembers that character with like the weird afro thing. Yeah, so they were kind of amusing. Also seeing, actually speaking of Funimation people too, Jason Douglas, who I actually met semi-recently, really nice guy. He's also 7,000 feet tall, Jesus Christ. Yeah, he was mixed in there, and then like JB Blanc, who's with my agency, and so seeing all like couple like voice actor people kind of mixed around, and I was like, oh yeah, I know those people. Like those are the people I'm recognizing. Which what does that say about me? Yeah, they were cool, and not that a lot of the other main cast of Breaking Bad haven't gone on to do VO and a lot of stuff. I mean, Bryan Cranston's, he was doing voiceover even before he was in Breaking Bad, but that said, other special guests, people like Danny Trejo as Tortuga was a fun little one-off character, and with a untimely demise. I wonder if he's gone on to keep his own head as a souvenir from doing that show. Tuco, who my first exposure to Tuco was actually from the first couple episodes of Better Call Saul, because I saw those before I got up to when he shows up in Breaking Bad. So seeing his insane nature and his stuff with his family and everything, that was certainly interesting to see where he came from, and and then seeing how he was later, and his whole kind of mini arc within the first season, and then into the because the first and second season are kind of like tightly knit together, because like season 1, quote unquote, just kind of ends in the middle of like, oh, we're fucked, we're just in this now and we're in his clutches, and then the fact that season 2 so quickly ends up in what happens with him and everything, it's like, oh Jesus. But he was really cool, and then some of the other villains, I'm gonna go into Gus in a bit here, but let me address Todd and Uncle Jack real quick. With throughout the series and seeing some of these like awful people, a lot of these drug lords and characters like that, all of them were like pretty much immediately topped by the likes of Todd and Uncle Jack and his fucking white supremacist gang, because dear God, I had never been more happy to see a bunch of characters just absolutely fucking die a bloody, horrible, gory death in a live action, because I'm not a big gore guy. He's Uncle Jack and all that posse of characters and all the just unspeakable shit that they do, particularly to Jesse. And of course, I mean, other characters that they had straight up killed, but Jesse in particular, I was like, oh, I hate all of you, and I want all of you to just fucking just rot like beyond imagination. The only kind of cool thing, the cool thing that they led themselves to, or at least Todd did before Uncle Jack and the rest got involved, was Todd got to be part of my favorite scene of the entire show, and wound up putting a literal cap off it by putting a cap in this poor kid who just happened to be a witness, which was terrible. But the train scene, that was, I think, one of the few scenes that I went back and rewatched. I'm on the likes of a couple other bits, but that is hands down, that entire sequence of robbing the train of the I forget what like element it was they needed for the meth stuff. That entire sequence is absolutely incredible. The music, the camera angles, the acting, just everything. It's fucking perfect. I love that shit. But other than that, Todd can go fuck himself, and God, I hated that character so goddamn much. I'm sure his actor's probably a wonderful person, but I just, every time I saw Todd, I'm like, I want to punch you in the fucking face so hard. I guess also worth pointing out was Lydia. I remember Lydia was kind of cool. She was just kind of a sort of a mild, like, end game kind of character, and she was cool. She had some interesting stuff that went on with her. She had some interesting kind of mystery and intrigue to her, and kind of how she fit in with the whole by that point, just how far that hole had been fucking dug for everybody, for all the main characters involved. And she was just kind of she wasn't a good person by any stretch of the imagination, and she probably didn't necessarily deserve for everything that happened to her to happen to her, but everybody was a piece of shit virtually. So it's like, yeah, well, can't really be too hard on her about that, or hard on the story going the way it went. Another one of my favorite characters, who I'm very much looking forward to showing back up in Better Call Saul again soon, was Gus. I remember liking Gus in like his first scene, basically. His first couple scenes, because I believe that the second time he showed up was when he has the I don't think that you're careful at all, Mr. White scene, like within his fast food chain. He was just Giancarlo Esposito has this like incredible like presence to him. Like he's another guy actually that I recognized from some voiceover stuff before, funnily enough. And I also rewatched I finished Monkey Bone recently, which was a movie that I walked out of and never finished. And I never actually got up to when he showed up in the movie, and he's hysterical in it, for fuck's sake. But Gus was this, and I understand actually why a lot of people would love to see like a spinoff with him. I don't know if I necessarily want to see that, because I think that a lot of what his deal was, as well as I think that we're going to get to learn a little bit more about him in Better Call Saul too. I think that he was one of the most like interesting characters in terms of like the mystery surrounding him, and like, because like Mike had pointed out to me how you never really know if he actually has a family that he's taking care of, or what he even does with all that money. Like, what the hell is he even doing? Like he's this like massive, fucking underground drug lord that like, is like the shadow leader of all this crazy shit or whatever. But like, there's so much about him that we don't know. And yet the stuff that we do know is so incredibly fucking intriguing, and like, it's so cool and interesting. And like every episode where like he was a main focus was a fucking treat. And even though like in some ways I was like, I was sad to see him go, the way he went out was fucking fantastic. And I will definitely give credit that like the forces uniting to fucking take him down basically were certainly that was a really cool payoff. It was pretty fucked up the way that it managed to go down. but yeah, I mean, like his untimely demise and his gruesome final moment was another one that I mean, like, it's so like short and incredible. That was another scene that I would go back and rewatch over and over, even though it like mildly makes me kind of sick, but it doesn't make me as sick as what the fucking white supremacist gang characters would do somehow. So yeah, I don't know, but nonetheless, yeah, Gus is great. Love that character. Really happy to see him hopefully come back later on. So I guess that now we finally come to good old Mr. White. Yeah, science. So I hated Walter in the beginning of the show. I detested him, and I was finding him interesting. He was certainly a very interesting character, but I hated him. And thankfully, of course, the interest was enough for me to want to continue watching the show, which I did, and I continue to enjoy it. Mike was kind of pointing that out too, where like he was, because I think Mike was a little bit more connected to like what the fandom response was, because he was following it as it happened, I believe. But he was talking about how like Walter is a very conflicting character in terms of like, some people think like, oh, he's so fucking cool and badass, and I love everything that he does. And I guess in terms of just the fantasy, like people would never do that, but they just like think he's cool for what he's doing. And then other people who like are rooting against him, but they're following every stupid decision that he makes, every awful, act that he commits, like, and they're so sucked in because it's like, I think that there is truthfully a lot, and it all made sense at the very end. There is truthfully a lot that where it's like, when you're in this position of like, would you do the same? Would you, make these same kind of decisions? Would you go about your life in the same way? Maybe not even in the same way of terms of like being a drug lord, but in terms of making these rash, like, holy shit, my life is over, I'm gonna fucking, enjoy myself type of perspective, because that's what it was. I remember finally in like the last like episode or two, I believe, it's when he has his final meeting with Skylar. And he finally fucking admits, I did it for me. I did it because I liked it. I did it because I was good at it, and it made me feel good about myself. That was finally the moment where I was like, okay, I like Walter. It certainly helped that also he, brought a hail of fucking gunfire down on the fucking white supremacist characters too. That was certainly a good help. And the way that he dies, I think, also was a good, kind of send off as well. That, he died in, his atmosphere and his his state of being in his, in his lab, where he belonged. He lived and died by what it is that he loved doing more than anything else in the fucking world. I guess you can say I liked the story surrounding him by the consequences of his actions more than I liked the character himself. And whether or not you're supposed to like him or supposed to root for him or whatever, I guess that's kind of like up to the individual viewer's interpretation. He's not the type of protagonist that I would normally be like sympathizing for or rooting for, because I didn't sympathize with him or root for him at any point until virtually the very, very end of the show. But I was very sucked in and interested to, with everything that was happening with him and all the consequences of what he. And I think also because virtually everything that happened with all of the other major characters, including all of the ones that I mentioned that were my favorites, were directly as a result of his fuck ups and his lies and his deception and his bullshit throughout everything. And he was definitely one of the most unique and interesting protagonists in anything. I mean, he definitely made the show live up to the hype of everybody saying this is one of the greatest TV shows, one of the greatest like news stories of our generation that have ever been told. And I agree. I'm really glad that I did finally watch this. It was a major inspiration. I found like every episode to have just something that was very, very, always, nothing was ever boring me. Nothing was ever making me be like, man, fucking this episode sucks or this character's dumb or whatever. Like all the way through, I've now been made into a fan of this. I've really been enjoying Better Call Saul. As you can probably notice, I have not gone into good old James McGill and Mike Ehrmantraut, who are both characters that I love. At the moment, thanks to just the first two seasons of Better Call Saul that I've watched, Saul is actually currently my favorite character in all of the Breaking Bad mythos, but I want to see how his arc completes, if they plan on completing it in the scope of the scope of Better Call Saul, however long it's going to go for. And same with Mike. I want to kind of see the rest of like what connects him into the beginning of Breaking Bad, because I did really like Mike a lot too. I thought he was really cool, and now that I've gotten to see a little bit more about what both he and Saul are about, and the other characters that are exclusive to Better Call Saul, I definitely want to see more about them and see kind of where they're going. But I want to judge them whenever the show happens to be finished, which who knows when that will be. But I know the third season is happening, I think, next month, so I'm definitely going to tune in for that. But that's it for now. That's my thoughts on all the major characters of Breaking Bad. I'm very glad that I finally sat down and watched through the show. Really enjoyed it, and that's gonna do it. So, in the comments below, let me know if I'm assuming again if you've listened to this, you've watched the entire series. Let me know your favorite characters, your favorite episodes, your favorite moments, characters that you didn't like, things that you didn't like about the show. Anything at all, let me know your thoughts. I'm curious to see some other opinions, especially because, again, I had no perception of what the fandom was like for this, so I'm curious as to what other people's thoughts were as the show was airing, especially if you were following it as it was airing, But and even if you didn't, even if you just binged it on Netflix like I did, let me know. So yeah, that'll do it. Next Kirblog, I don't know what it's going to be necessarily, but I believe a week from today will be when I have the one about reviewing the new Power Rangers movie, because I'm going to be seeing that this Friday. So who knows what'll be next? I'll probably dig into another. In fact, if you have a Kirblog topic suggestion, if you've made it this far through these 30 minutes, let me know. Leave something in the comments. Maybe I'll do it this weekend. Maybe I'll dig into an old question that I haven't addressed from my stockpile that I haven't touched in a while. Sorry about that. That'll do it. I'll see all you guys next time, and thanks for listening. Bye.